without further ado, who do you have here as your top 10 and why?
Yeah, my list right there. I appreciate it. So I went a little reverse of what Vegas did. Not quite chalk. I went Rory and then Scottie, and we can sit here and split hairs about it. And I certainly understand how Scottie is the betting favorite right now. But my argument has been, and I've made this argument on this podcast, that if you just did a blind taste test and you took the names off of it, and I just showed you the resumes of those two players, you would lean towards Rory. He clearly is playing better golf this year. It's marginal. It's not by a whole lot. And I'm not going to be surprised if Scottie puts on the green jacket again on Sunday. However, I think those two are pretty easy, 1 and 2. Collin Morikawa, for the reasons that we've talked about, we're going to probably say this 1,000 times this week. It'd be a fun drinking game if you guys want to play it at home. It's not a putting contest. It's a second shot golf course. And there aren't many people in the game who hit second shots, mid to long irons, as well as Collin Morikawa. So I would put him third. I almost reverse course. You and I had an interesting conversation on the golf course today, because the live guys are a whole different scenario, and them playing Doral this week and how
big boy golf course, Rex.
Big boy golf course, and you saw some of the big names not really deliver. So I have Jon Rahm and Bryson DeChambeau rounding out my top 5. Bryson DeChambeau did not play well on Sunday at Doral when conditions were difficult, and that to me is a bit of an alarm bell. Again, this is the first time we've seen any of the live guys really play a golf course that we can compare to Augusta, at least when it comes to degree of difficulty. I still like Jon Rahm simply because I know he didn't play great here last year, and I know he didn't play particularly well in the majors last year, but I think there's some institutional knowledge, and I feel like he's probably turned a corner from where he was last year. Hideki Matsuyama, he's won here before. That was kind of a gut feeling. I guess if one stood out to me.
What has Hideki Matsuyama done over the past 3 months? I'll take out the Century, where he had the record-breaking 35 under par performance.
It doesn't matter. I make this argument all the time about Hideki. I make this argument all the time about Hideki, that he is the most inconsistent superstar in the game, where he can have 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 week stretches where it's either middle of the pack or maybe he's even missing the cut. And then suddenly he shows up and he's brilliant like he was at the Century. He's brilliant like he was when he won here at Augusta National. He's brilliant like we've seen so many times out of his career. He's not consistent. We're never going to confuse Hideki for Scottie Scheffler when it comes to consistency, but I still like the idea that we know he can play this golf course well. As I just mentioned, it's a second shot golf course. Everybody drink. And I think he does all of those things well. I guess I'll skip right to the end of the list. I won't bore anyone with the rest of it, going through it person by person. I went back and forth on this, and you kind of threw this at me out of left field. I have to admit, I had like 15 minutes to put this together before we had to get on the road to get to Palmetto. I like Patrick Reed, and you and I talked about this on the golf course today. It's not exactly, I don't think he would be a particularly popular champion, but I think there's something about this.
He'd be a 2-time champion, of course, at that point.
But there's something about this golf course. But I went back and forth between him and JT because I feel like JT's game is in a position, but I don't know that he's played this golf course particularly well. So I don't feel great about the end of my lineup, if I'm being honest.
Patrick Reed does, however, have 3 top 12 finishes in his last 4 years. Played decently at times during the Live Doral event. I don't hate that pick. In fact, I think like if you got an office pool or you're playing daily fantasy, or you got to figure out your fantasy team for the week, like I think Patrick Reed is probably a deeper sleeper, particularly if you're going off world rankings, and you can now get quite a bargain as it relates.
Well, and I ended up again, this was the wrestling match that I did between JT and Xander, because we've talked a lot about everything that Xander has been through this year with the injury. Clearly, he wasn't happy with where his game was at the Players' Championship. He might be a little bit closer now. I guess we're going to find out once the week starts. He's going to talk to the media on Monday. I ended up going with Xander, but that one was tough. I mean, if you asked me which part of that list was the hardest, it was coming up with who I was going to put 10th.
All right. This is my list, Rex. Again, many of the same names that you have, slightly different order, slightly different ending. I think Scottie Scheffler and Rory McIlroy. I'm not going to, I'm not going to hate on anyone who thinks that Rory is the favorite heading in here. If you look at strokes gained total, he is the number 1 player on the PGA Tour this year. He's top 30 in every major statistical category. From a strokes gained perspective, this is the second best Rory has ever been heading into Augusta National. It's also the only time in his career that he has won twice. So again, if you think the drinking game is Second Shot Golf Course at Augusta National, the drinking game is going to be that Thursday is the most important day of Rory McIlroy's entire year. I can absolutely not wait to walk all 18 holes with Rory McIlroy on Thursday. Is going to be must-see TV and is going to set the tone the entire week. So I think those two are obvious. You mentioned Collin Morikawa, 3 consecutive top 10s at the Masters. Obviously, we know about the iron player. He's the best iron player on the PGA Tour this year, better than Rory, better than Scottie, better than Hideki, better than anyone else on the planet. And he's just a more complete player than even when he won his major championships in 2020 and 2021. John Rahm, no surprise there as well. I don't feel great, Rex, about Ludwig Åberg heading into the Masters, coming off back-to-back missed the cuts at the Players Championship, where he made a number of double bogeys, missed the cut at Valero Texas Open, where again his iron play was so scratchy. And so this is a golf course that is going to demand precision. It would not surprise me at all if he's a little bit tighter at Augusta National, if he can use the driving machine that he has off the tee to put himself in better positions. He clearly knows how to play the golf course, even with a very limited sample size. In his Masters debut last year, his major debut last year, he was leading the golf tournament with 8 holes to play before an uncharacteristic mistake missing in the water on 11. And so I still like Ludwig Åberg to put it all together. I'm at the back half of the lineup here is where I think you can probably take a little bit of flyers. Russell Henley playing the best golf of his life. We've already seen what he can do on difficult, torturous, golf course that absolutely demand precision and accuracy and patience at Bay Hill and winning the Arnold Palmer Invitational. So I like taking a flyer on Russell Henley. And Patrick Cantlay, again, sort of a poor man's version of Xander Schauffele in terms of being so complete, not having any weaknesses in his game, despite having his one top 10 career finish at the Masters, had a chance to win in 2019. Any commentary from you, Rex, in terms of what you like or don't like of my top favorites?
No, I was just comparing the list. So I guess the differences are, when you break it down, you had no love for P. Reed, which I certainly understand because, again, we've talked about this, where the LIV guys are just difficult to handicap when it comes to
I also think the significant rains that we're going to get on Monday is going to make Augusta National, already a 7,600-yard golf course, play even longer. Obviously, distance is not a strong suit of his, has a low ball flight. I think he could struggle in those sort of conditions.
Russell Henley feels like it's a homer pick, which I would expect out of you. Again, the Bulldog thing always seems to rear its ugly head, and I'm sure you just felt like you had to get one in there. You don't feel comfortable with Bubba Watson. Apparently, what Brian Harmon did on Sunday in San Antonio wasn't good
I like Sepp Straka, but he's probably going to finish top 15. I'm talking about guys who can, I think, legitimately win the golf tournament. Wouldn't surprise me if Sepp is in contention heading the weekend, but I think it's probably a stretch for him. He's never done it at a major before.
Yeah, I guess Russell Henley would be the only one. Patrick Cantlay, I kind of batted about a little bit. I don't know. I guess I need to see him perform a little bit better on this golf course before I have that kind of confidence. Certainly, he has the game. You're right. When you break it down, the A through C things you need to do well on this particular golf course, he seems to do those things well. That his resume would fit if you're looking for the prototype player who could contend for a green jacket. I think I need to see it a little bit more out of Cantlay, but I certainly wouldn't debate it. I guess Ludwig would be the one. I feel like I may have a little bit more confidence in him than you do, although I think we both had him about the same spot. I think I had him 6th and you have him 5th. So it's clearly you and I both feel like, yes, he could do this. I guess I'm seeing Ludwig who did what he did when he won earlier this season. And I think you're maybe seeing a version of how inconsistent he was last year. And we've touched on this, the idea that I think last year was very much a misnomer. And I
think he's been inconsistent.
What he's done.
He's been inconsistent this year. He'll have flourishes where he looks good. Obviously, he got sick around that Farmers Insurance Open, Pebble Beach.
I mean, missing the cut at the Players was shocking. I think we both agreed with that. I mean, that was something that neither one of us saw coming. However, given what he's done in a very, very early, small sample size on this golf course, given his skill set, given the fact that he seems to be the next player who would step up, and we've had this conversation before. If we're being honest, we're probably going to go to 15 or 20 guys tops that I would truly feel comfortable would have a chance of winning this week, simply because of the field size and who's invited and everything else that goes into it. I feel like he's going to be on that list for a long time. I did want to turn it a little bit because we'll get into this on Wednesday and the preview podcast, and we'll also do it for the website. However, give me the dark horse that you threw out there was fascinating to me. And this was off air, so you're probably not going to like it. But I threw Phil's name out there, honestly, half joking, even though he played well at Doral last week. He seems to be playing a little bit better golf this season. And I think your response was, oh, he'd be a good dark horse.
Yes, I think he absolutely would be a good dark horse. I think you can sort of dismiss what he did earlier this year on Live. He had a top 3 finish. I believe it was in Hong Kong. It was either Hong Kong or Singapore. I believe it was Hong Kong. But it was a very tight, very short golf course. He wasn't hitting driver. He was just sort of plodding his way around. But he's clearly found something in his game, Rex. He's showing, I think, finally at this age, you talk about like older pitchers who can no longer just throw heat on the outside corner. You sort of have to paint it. You have to pitch differently. You have to be a little bit more strategic. I finally feel like Phil is at that stage in his career where he's not just the swashbuckler anymore. Like he's finally learned to adapt. Okay, I can try and hit bombs, but I really just need to do my best to be middle of the pack at this point. And he can still do damage with his wedges. He can still do damage with his scoring clubs. He can still get hot with the putter. And obviously his short game skills have never really left him. And so I think we've started to see that evolution from Phil, take what you want from the Live results over the past couple months. Again, played well last week at Doral, an entirely different test than what he did and how he performed a month or so ago. I mean, he finished, in a tie for second just a couple years ago, and he was nowhere near in this sort of form. That really came out of nowhere. So he clearly knows how to play the golf course, and now I think he has a command in his game that I would not totally discount him as sort of a wild card or maybe like an each way bet finishing inside the top 6. Not out of the realm of possibilities.